Hello, and thanks so much for joining the Invisible Americans podcast with Jeff Madrick and Carol Jenkins. We address the travesty of child poverty here.
There are nearly 13 million children living in serious material deprivation in America, and we don't see them. They are our invisible Americans, and we plan to change that.
A couple of words about us. The podcast is based on Jeff's book, Invisible Americans, The Tragic Cost of Child Poverty. He's an economics writer, author of 7, and co-author of another 4 books on the American economy.
And Carol is an Emmy-winning journalist, activist, and author, most recently president of the ERA Coalition, working to amend the Constitution to include women.
And we are longtime colleagues and friends. Thanks so much for joining us for the first episode of this, the 4th season of our podcast to end child poverty. The topic today, the groundswell in the movement toward unconditional cash support for our babies. Our guests today are New York City Council President Adrienne Adams, who has launched a first-ever city cash program. And afterwards, we talk with Laura Clancy, Executive Director of the nonprofit The Bridge Project that will implement that program. Our co-host today is Dr. C. Nicole Mason, anti-poverty expert, President Emerita of the Women's Policy Institute, and author of Born Bright, A Young Girl's Journey from Nothing to Something in America. There are more than 1,400 babies born in New York City shelters every year, babies with no homes. The New York City Council made big news when it announced it was dedicating $1.5 million for unconditional cash income for expectant mothers facing housing crises in the city. Partnering with the Bridge Project, it would guarantee support for 3 years for 161 recipients. Speaker of the Council, Adrienne Adams, is the leadership of this first ever breakthrough. She talked about why city governments should adopt the concept of guaranteed income, how much money it saves, and about the persistent crisis of Black maternal health in New York City and her plans to end it. Thank you so much, Speaker Adams. It's a pleasure to have you. If I were still living in Jamaica, Queens, you'd be my representative. I grew up there.
Really? Oh my goodness. There's more trivia from Carol Jenkins, the legend. I had no idea.
I did. Botch Boulevard and 170th Street.
Right down the street? Wow.
So thank you for representing us so well. And, it's incredible. Many people do not know because they think that New York is so progressive and sophisticated that you are the first woman and the first Black person to be Speaker of the City Council in New York City. It's incredible.
Isn't that something, Carol? And we're in 2025 now. I still marvel at the whole thing. I was elected in 2017 to represent District 28 as the first woman council member. And then in 2022 to be the first Black speaker for the city council. It's just amazing to me that, these days we are still chalking up, firsts for Black folk.
Exactly. Well, I'm delighted to be talking to the first.
Thank you.
And you have a first ever project to talk about that we here at the Invisible Americans are also so excited about. And that is guaranteed income for our babies. The announcement was really shocking when you did it. I don't think anybody expected the New York City Council, to be so zeroed in on the problem with our child poverty issues.
It's just amazing, when we think about these things, and I just have to step back and just say, we're the first women majority city council ever. So we are actually leading this council with the men that get it. I'll shout them out also. We've got a couple of them that really do get it. And we are also the most diverse city council. We have mothers, first-time mothers, and now since I've been speaker, we now have second-time mothers. They're on their second babies now. So we've done a lot of legislating that New York has never seen before. These are things that have been put on the back burner, that have never been prioritized by any of my predecessors. We are now putting our families forward, our children forward, our communities forward, our healthcare forward, things that actually do matter to us because we live this thing. I keep saying we are our own constituents. So the City Council established an initiative that for the first time uses municipal funding to support a guaranteed income program. And this groundbreaking initiative is specifically for expectant mothers, operated by the Bridge Project.
Especially and particularly for a certain kind of expectant mother. And this is a problem that we have in New York City of those without housing. Or in danger of losing housing. Talk to us about that. What is the number of babies born in New York City shelters? Is it like 1,400?
Yeah, I believe so. It's a significant number. With that high number, which is absolutely unacceptable to us, guaranteed income programs, though, can provide greater financial stability for its recipients. And this is particularly critical for expectant mothers and their children at a pivotal time that's already stressful enough. You mentioned housing. Addressing housing and economic security is key to maternal health because we have to realize that the challenges that women face before, during, and after pregnancy all contribute to stressors that impact their health and health incomes and outcomes, actually. And housing is one of the biggest challenges that our city is facing. So helping to create better housing outcomes for mothers and their babies is absolutely key for us to do that. In previous cohorts, even of this program operated again by the Bridge Project, 63% of participants living in transitional housing moved into permanent housing within a 9-month period. I think that's a lot to cheer about.
Exactly, exactly. Tell us how your program will work. We know from Bridge that it's either a biweekly or a monthly payment. It takes place for the first 3 years, which gives a person, a mother, a baby enough time to adjust and to become solid in their lives.
Yeah, that's right. This program guarantees income for pregnant mothers who, again, are experiencing housing difficulty. Some have come out of domestic violence situations. Some have come out of other types of situations where they are really, really on their own. This is guaranteed income that will take them through a period in their lives where afterward, they become financially stable. We've heard stories a few weeks ago, you and I were in the same space, and we heard incredible stories of women that one was in a domestic violence situation, someone else was on their own. They wept as they told us their stories and said that had it not been for this particular program, they don't know where they would be. So we're just happy to provide, the assistance, the income. We saw some of the children running around, and it's just an amazing feeling to be a part, of really the first day of the best day of these women's lives.
The thing that always makes your heart sing to see those babies, to see those children coloring and smiling.
Yeah.
And so you're going to be changing lives. What about the sum? You've put $1.5 million. For those who would say this is a lot of money, it's very expensive. But you have said this is a cost saving for the city of New York.
It absolutely is. When we think about, the million or so that we put in, that's a drop in the bucket. Considering how many lives, we've touched and still have the potential to touch. Right now, we're talking about 161 women and, spread across the needs of these women. That's really a drop in the bucket. But we are happy that we do have, the philanthropy factor also working with us with this, and we're going to need them. We're going to need an even bigger, push for philanthropy to help these women along, because once we see the outcome, we see the potential. I mean, these women, they come in, college graduates, high school graduates, just raring to go, and to see where some of them now, with degrees, full degrees, master's degrees, everything that they could only dream of years ago in the situations that they were in meant to held them down are now that those situations are pushed out of the way and they have amazing hope, a future that, it's just marvelous and incredible.
And I know that you have spoken quite vehemently about the maternal health situation in New York City.
Yeah. Black women are 6 times more likely to die due to pregnancy-related issues than our white counterparts. Who would think in 2025 that we're dealing with this situation where those statistics are not going down, but they're actually increasing, Carol? I just, it's an incredible thing, to even think about that. Something that is supposed to be the most natural thing ever, what our bodies were built for, to give life. And women are dying in incredible numbers still to this day. So I prioritized this issue, something else that, lived experiences. My mom had several false alarms. When she, gave birth to me, I was due on January 14th, and I actually came into this world on December 9th. After her, fourth or so false alarm going into Elmhurst General Hospital where they didn't believe that she was in labor again. Well, they told her to sit down on a gurney in the back and, just, catch your breath or whatever. My mother gave birth to me alone. In that hospital. So, I still say after all these years, I'm a walking miracle because we both could have been dead on a gurney.
That you were on a gurney in the hallway, and your mother delivered you by herself.
By herself. By herself. Yeah.
And we had a recent case of Beverlyn Garcia Barrios.
That's right.
You've used this as an example of no, we just cannot have this kind of, tragedy.
No, we cannot. Beverlyn, again, was another story that, was really a heartbreaking situation. We heard that story and it just propelled me to call together a press conference in the Red Room at City Hall to give an emergency speech to elevate the urgency of ending preventable pregnancy-related deaths that have cost far too many lives. This is ridiculous. And the data is clear. Startling, 50 and 60 women and birthing people lose their life from pregnancy or child-related causes in New York City each year. Black New Yorkers in particular are 6 times, as you and I have just said, more likely to die. We just can't accept this crisis as being normal. This is not normal. It's not inevitable, and it's preventable. We have to start acting with far more urgency through coordinated action to end maternal mortality and the racial disparities. So my steering committee, we're in full force. We've pulled together medical experts, advocates, the offices of elected officials. We had our second convening yesterday, just an amazing group of brilliant minds in one place because we have the answers. We just have to get together to put those solutions together so that they make sense, from everything from data to racial disparities to where the healthcare is actually touted and wonderful and where it is actually not that great, and why are people dying? What are the reasons in between? So we're hammering all of this out, and I think that we're going to finally come to some solutions together.
Well, I love the people you had around the table. I looked at every single one of the pictures and every face and every description. You've got midwives, doulas. It's one of the surprising things to me about the death rate was to discover that mental health issues play into effect. One always thinks that it's the medical, biological thing that happens, but apparently it's the mental health postpartum that taking away a lot of our women, our mothers.
Astounding. I agree with you. Where we're thinking it's the physical issue of giving birth, either medical conditions that may be present before, during or after. It's that fourth trimester that we've identified, that postpartum period that we've identified that is particularly critical. We have to start taking a harder look at that time period where, mothers, maybe a first-time mother, second-time mother, third-time mother, postpartum doesn't go away when the baby is born. Postpartum doesn't go away 3 months after, 6 months after, or 6 years after, even for some women. So we have to take a look at that continuum, how the life experience is happening for that mother. What are her experiences? What is her home life like? What is her mental state of mind like? All of these things play an important part, because we've noticed that the suicide rate, even the matricide rate, mothers killing their own children, killing themselves postpartum, all of these things we have to look at really, really closely. And I think that particularly through this steering committee, we're taking a look at everything with a fine-tooth comb.
Right. And certainly with Bridge, what you will get is the ability to follow them on a regular basis, either every 2 weeks, every month, for the 3-year period, which is, absolutely essential.
It really, really is. And that's the great thing about Bridge, is that Bridge does not let these mothers go. They don't let them go off on their own and say, all right, you've completed, quote unquote, a program. Now go off and live your life. Bridge is a lifeline, a sustaining lifeline. So this is something that we heard from the mothers a few weeks ago, that sustenance that they need to continue to go on, live their lives, be prosperous and successful.
So are you hoping that this is followed by other cities, by other local governments? I mean, you in New York City setting the stage for this means a lot. That's a big investment, a very visible investment, and a good one.
Yeah, New York is always the trendsetter. We're always the first to do this great stuff. So hopefully we will be the role models for other jurisdictions to follow. We know that, we've done this in the past, as far as, our funding sources for reproductive health care and the right to have an abortion and, and other things. We're hoping that, our focus in this particular area does take off in other jurisdictions, and that once again, New York sets the bar for others to follow.
What are the next steps for the steering committee?
The steering committee will continue meeting, every couple of weeks. We have at least 2 sets of note takers for breakout sessions. So we are working to compile information, over the next few months. We will have our information together. We're going to be able to present it. And hopefully, Carol, we're going to be able to save some lives.
Excellent. I'm sure you will. And thank you from the bottom of our hearts. The work that you're doing for the mothers and grandmothers who are in the positions of power now to take notice of our children.
Thank you.
What is known as the Appalachian region in the United States covers several states. It's also known for its high childhood poverty, 3 times the national average, affecting almost 15% of the children in that area. Dr. C. Nicole Mason and I talked with Laura Clancy, Executive Director of the Bridge Project, the guaranteed income project that began in Manhattan. And as you've heard in our conversation with Speaker Adams, is working with the city of New York and has now expanded as far as Appalachia in the states of Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia. So, Laura, thank you so much for being with us today. We've been friends of the Bridge Project for a long time now. We're huge fans of everything you all do. And Nicole, thanks so much for joining us as co-host, formerly and previously a guest of ours, a fantastic friend of the podcast as well. Laura, if you could bring us up to date on this tremendous expansion of the Bridge Project's work. I know you started in my neighborhood in Manhattan, and now you're almost everywhere. Tell us about your expansion.
So we began in New York City during the early parts of the COVID pandemic to serve some of the most vulnerable people in New York City, which we saw as pregnant women, particularly pregnant women who were undocumented. And we realized very quickly that unconditional cash was a way to move significant resources to moms with actually a very strong evidence base. There's incredible research, both domestically and internationally, about the impact of unconditional cash, both for mom and for baby. And it really propelled us to launch a really significant expansion effort. We're now in New York City, as you mentioned, but we've also grown to Buffalo and Rochester. So we have a nice footprint within the state of New York. We're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin now. We recently opened up statewide in Connecticut. And just 2 weeks ago, we opened our first site in the Appalachian regions of Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky. So we're really trying to look at the impact of this intervention in a variety of different settings.
So Appalachia, why Appalachia?
Well, Appalachia is home to a lot of moms and babies living in poverty. It's an area that philanthropists have not historically invested in and paid attention to. We really wanted to see if this intervention had the same positive impact as in very rural areas without a lot of other resources, as it seemed to in more urban areas where moms just have more resources to access. And so far, the response has been tremendous. We had, for example, webinars with local health clinics and providers, community-based organizations, and we literally had to upgrade our Zoom subscription to accommodate the 370 people who ended up joining these webinars. And we've gotten over 850 applications in just 2 weeks, which I think really speaks to the power and the appeal of unconditional cash as an intervention for low-income pregnant women.
So I'm really excited about the program, especially the expansion in Appalachia and the emerging program in New York. I do a lot of anti-poverty work, and nationally about 11 million children live in poverty, but only 1.5 million of those children receive any kind of cash benefits. How do programs like the Bridge Project or guaranteed income programs help to close that gap and move families and children out of poverty?
One quick stat just to reframe the 11 million statistic, that's more than the entire population of Greece and is completely unacceptable. We do a one-on-one call with them and a social worker where we do a couple of things. The first is we say, okay, before you join this program, let's look at your current benefits so that you understand what benefits you're getting right now and any impact that this program would have on other benefits. Usually we see very minimal, but some impact on benefits that we want to make sure participants are aware of before they accept the program. We can also then say, wait, you're not on Medicaid? Wait, you're not on WIC? And we make sure that they are fully apprised of the other resources that they could be utilizing. Now, some of those are more state and national level. Some of them are far more local. So, for example, here in New York City, I didn't mention this earlier, but we recently launched a partnership with the New York City Council to specifically support 161 women living in housing insecurity in New York City. And here in New York City, we have this amazing doula partnership where if you identify as being homeless, you get access to a doula. And so we're able to say to moms, wait, you're not on WIC? Let's get you on WIC. You're not on Medicaid? You should think about signing up for Medicaid. You don't have a doula and you actually have a doula alliance that you're eligible for. Let's get you hooked up with that. And so because trust is built very, very quickly with our team, I mean, generally speaking, we are bringing resources to mom with an unprecedented level of trust that they've never experienced before, sadly. They have higher uptake of the resources that we offer them because they know that we are 100% on their side, in their corner, and that anything we say to them it's totally up to them what they do with it. It's been really gratifying to see both how many moms are signing up for those benefits if they don't get it yet. We create a line of communication with those moms so that they can tell us when something isn't going right. So for example, right now we have a lot of moms who are experiencing challenges with their housing vouchers. I'm sure you've seen this statistic, Dr. Mason, before, but Matthew Desmond at Princeton talks about how in the US, only 1 in 6 people who should be eligible for housing subsidy actually gets a voucher or assistance of some kind. And so we hear from our moms who have said, listen, I've been waiting for 2 years for my Section 8 voucher, or I just got kicked out of the process. And we try and help them navigate so they can be more successfully connected to the resources that they are entitled to.
So in addition to the cash support, it seems like the families receive other kinds of supports in terms of learning how to access benefits, advocate for themselves, but also you all providing information so that they can advocate effectively.
That's right. And it's not full case management. We can't take credit for that. We often do refer people to other organizations who can provide full case management if they don't have that in their lives. But often it's just a conversation, right? So if you're in Connecticut and Connecticut just launched this incredible initiative where everybody who has a baby on the Husky Medicaid plan gets a baby bond, we can say, wait, did you know that if you're on Medicaid, you get this baby bond too? But let's get you signed up for Medicaid. And so you get this, $3,000+ for your baby for the baby bond. Honestly, it's often just like a nudge or making a connection for a mom that's really useful.
Laura, talk to us about the baby bonds. This is an exciting new territory.
Connecticut became the first state to offer a statewide baby bond. Essentially, if you're born onto their Medicaid plan, the Husky Medicaid plan, you automatically get a bond that can be used as an adult it's not unconditional by any means, but wealth building purposes. So for example, you can use it towards buying a residence in the state of Connecticut, starting a business, pursuing higher education. There are stipulations. A lot of it has to do with staying connected to Connecticut. But the concept is using the power of compounding to enable residents who don't have access to other forms of wealth building more access. And what we found is that it's really, really powerful for our moms when it's combined with a short-term guaranteed income program like the Bridge Project. Because imagine being a mom and being told, hey, listen, not only are you going to get up to $1,000 a month for the first 3 years of your baby's life, but also if you're on Medicaid, the state is putting this money aside for your baby to use when they're older. It totally transforms, I think, the experience of being late in your pregnancy, which is typically a time of such stress, such strain, to a time where you feel supported and a time when you feel stronger from those programs. So it's been phenomenal to be able to communicate with state officials in Connecticut and moms in Connecticut about that new offering. And we're excited that more states are considering baby bonds.
So it's money that's put in by the state. And now in this system, can parents also add to it during the years?
I'm not sure, but I don't think that's the case in Connecticut. I could be wrong about that.
That some of them work so that they can actually contribute to it. And the kids are eligible at 18.
That's right. But I do want to emphasize it's not unconditional. So it's certain wealth building activities that can be, that the funds can be utilized for.
I understand that you were just at the Federal Reserve talking about this.
That's right.
I'm always impressed when institutions like that are talking about babies and educating them. Tell us about that. How was that received?
Well, whenever you have a conference that requires people to go outside in January on a frigid New York day, you're probably going to get the people who are true believers anyway. So important caveat. But I think some of the most exciting content at that conference was new research out of Stanford that basically suggested that by providing something like a baby bond, that families were better able to prioritize saving for long-term wealth building activities for their child, but also were more likely to engage in what they called human capital building activities. So for example, coaching your kid's soccer team, being an involved parent, the research suggested that especially when you combine guaranteed income programs like the Bridge Project with longer term instruments like a baby bond, that parents were able on multiple levels to invest more in their children, not just for their subsistence needs, but also for just like general youth development activities and longer term wealth building activities.
And I want to go back to the city council cooperation. That was a significant triumph for you all to squeeze money out of, if I put it that way, out of the city of New York, to give to expecting mothers.
Let me reframe that very kind compliment. It was the first unconditional cash program that the New York City Council has ever supported. And we have been really grateful to them for their support. The city of New York currently spends, this is what they tell us, $6,000 a month to house a mom and her baby. Do you think that the average pregnant woman gets $6,000 a month worth of value from that offering? I can tell you from the moms that we've talked to, absolutely not. And so one of the things we're really excited about is actually researching for this intervention. Are we actually going to save the city money because we're getting moms into permanent housing more quickly? And in a time when the average shelter stay is something like 450 days in New York City, our ability to accelerate moms into permanent housing both has a very positive health impact for them and their babies, but also has significant upside from a cost perspective for the city. So they've been tremendous partners. It's been great to work with them. I'd also say they have a lot of money that they could be saving.
Well, that is tremendous. And this very morning, I was with Holly Fogel, the founder of the Bridge Project, taking a look at the new hub, the childhood hub. Talk to us about that. It is so exciting. Again, in my neighborhood, thank you so much, where a lot of undocumented families are being taken care of and their babies, and giving all of this advice you give them to get on their feet. Tell us about the hub.
This is not my area of expertise necessarily, but essentially the hub is designed to be a place where multiple hospitals and healthcare providers can collaborate to create a more holistic, trust-based experience for moms in the neighborhood, which is Washington Heights and Northern Manhattan more broadly. So our hope is that it'll be, although the Bridge Project isn't formally affiliated with it, we are huge fans. We have a lot of moms in Northern Manhattan. And what we want it to be is a place where moms feel very confident and very comfortable going in and seeking care. They can get the majority of their needs taken care of in a setting that feels really appropriate to them. And in a time when they're feeling especially vulnerable, particularly as you put it, our undocumented moms, we need to make sure that this is a time when we're rebuilding trust in the healthcare system for our most vulnerable citizens.
Nicole, you're an expert in this field. Share your thoughts on this kind of guaranteed income. What I love about it is that there's very little paperwork. And I think that, Nicole, you and I were talking about your experiences as a kid. You know, in fact, every adult survivor of childhood poverty has talked about watching their mothers have a nervous breakdown, filling out the paperwork. So talk to us a little bit about, this new guaranteed income system.
So I'm really excited about guaranteed income programs in general. And as you all know, the social safety net has shrunk significantly since 1996 when welfare program was reformed. And so there are less families who are accessing cash benefits, and the average cash benefits is between $550 and $600. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about, Laura, is that you say, in the state of Wisconsin, you all received about, 800 applications for 22 or so slots. And then, you had over 800 applications in Appalachia. What does that tell you about the need for the program and the economic insecurity that families are facing in this at this moment?
You raised such a good point. There is almost infinite demand for programs like this. People ask us, do you have a hard time with recruitment? We're like, absolutely not. And in fact, other interventions that aren't direct cash programs often want us to refer moms to them because we have so many eyeballs on us and we get so much attention, in part because every 2 weeks we're giving them money, right? And so we have the attention of our moms for 3 years. Every 2 weeks, we're in touch with them to make sure that they're getting their money correctly. I think one of the reasons why it's so important for us to not just directly operate this program, but also work with policymakers to set larger policy goals is that there's no way that we can, as a philanthropy that's primarily foundation funded, meet the entire need. So you may have seen in Governor Hochul's State of the State, I think it was last week, she's proposing something called the baby benefit, which would be the first statewide pre- and postnatal cash benefit for low-income moms ever. And we're both incredibly excited about the potential for that to reach tens of thousands of moms in New York State. Also, to us, that's an opening. We think the cash should be larger amounts, longer duration, even more generous. And so to that end, last year we proposed something called, we were architecting something called the Milk Bill. It has since been rebranded to the New York baby bucks allowance, but which would essentially be an enriched version of that pre and postnatal benefit. Once people who work in the nonprofit sector, who are used to having really arduous recruitment cycles, hear what it's like to be us when we'll get literally 300 applications in the first 20 minutes of an application being opened because people hear about it and they're like, that is exactly what I need. Please sign me up. It really makes you reconsider the relative value of direct cash versus other forms of service programs, which may or may not be as efficient, as effective, as targeted as direct cash is.
And then once the paperwork is filled out, you then award the money by lottery. Once you meet the criteria, then you're lucky you get chosen.
That's right. And to be honest, sometimes when we tell moms, I'm so sorry that you weren't chosen in the lottery, they'll come back and say, like, I really could have used this. And we'll say, great, let's figure out how to use that energy for advocacy, because you are the most powerful voice that any policymaker could ever hear in terms of what this money would have meant to you if you got into this lottery.
So, Nicole, I want to ask you and Laura about your thoughts about this year and what it is we need to be doing.
Well, I think we have our work cut out ahead of us, especially when we think about the economic security of women and families and immigrant families in particular. And so a lot of it is going to be holding the line and trying to maintain the benefits and services that are already on the books. And it's going to come down to states being willing to step up and maintain those programs and advocate for them at the federal level. It remains to be seen for me about whether or not we're going to be able to pass anything proactive or any new legislation or expand the earned income tax credit and some of the other programs that we know are really critical to lifting people out of poverty and families out of poverty. It just remains to be seen in the early days of this administration about the kinds of work we'll be able to do in partnership.
Laura?
I completely second everything that Dr. Mason just said. I would add a few additional thoughts. The first is, I think housing insecurity is going to be it should be at the top of every policymaker agenda. HUD just released data from 2024 that showed very steep increases across the board, even over 1 year, and especially for family homelessness. And we cannot ignore the fact that increasingly more and more low-income people in America are falling into one of HUD's categories for homelessness, which would be attempting to flee a domestic violence situation, living in a shelter or outdoors, living in overcrowded situations, and or dealing with an eviction court order. So we're going to see more and more pregnant women falling into that category. And shelter is absolutely disastrous for mom and for baby from a variety of outcomes, moral hazard outcomes, but also health outcomes. Babies who are born into shelter, and there were 2,000 of them born into shelter in New York City last year alone, which is an absolutely unconscionable number. They're far more likely to experience higher rates of respiratory illness. In particular, they're less likely to meet developmental milestones by 18 months and suffer from a variety of other deleterious outcomes that will take a lifetime to undo. So as we think about this political moment that we're in, think about bipartisan opportunities to show whether this intervention works or doesn't work in a variety of settings in red and blue states, because at the end of the day, there are babies and moms who need an intervention like this. And if we're talking about efficiency, you want to know what's efficient is giving a pregnant mom cash. She knows exactly what she needs to do with it. It is going to be squeezed like to the last penny. And I hope that policymakers and decision makers can see direct cash as a very efficient way to deliver aid, not as a handout, not as a way for people to avoid work.
Well, for both of you, thank you for your predictions and suggestions for the next year. We'll be talking to you again, I'm sure. Laura, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Nicole, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Carol.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Invisible Americans podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. But we urge you to visit our website for transcripts, show notes, research, and additional information about our guests and their work. That's www.theinvisibleamericans.com. Please follow us on social media and our new YouTube channel. And our blog posts are up on Medium as well as our website. That's www.theinvisibleamericans.com. Jeff and I will see you the next time.